Hi and welcome to another of the DTA screencasts. So what we'll be looking at in this session for your A-level PE is the motor unit. So let's get started. So in essence what we're talking about is your ability to contract your muscles, and all of them involve motor units. So let's look at the anatomy first of all. Alright, so your neuromuscular system relates to the nervous system and also the muscular system and how they're connected. So you have sensory neurons and also motor neurons. So here's an image of a motor neuron, and we'll look at this in a little bit more detail in a bit. So what we have as well is the sensory neuron, and what its job is to detect the movement of the body or the senses from all of the senses, and it sends its message to the central nervous system, and then the motor neuron sends it from the central nervous system down to our skeletal muscle. Okay, so one goes to and then the other one goes away. So let's look at a motor neuron in a little bit more detail, and here it is. So you can see it's got three fundamental parts, and the ones we really want to focus on are the central part and also the latter part. So the middle part here is the axon, and this is where we pass the signal down through the motor neuron. The other really important part we talk about here is where it connects to the muscle fibre, and that's known as the neuromuscular junction. Again, make sure you note that down. So let's look at those neuromuscular junctions in a little bit more detail and see these like tiny little feet. These are what we're talking about. Now, the interesting thing about these is that motor units all work together to create skeletal movement, but it's very, very coordinated. So they're all going to occur at the same time. And then if we go even into further detail at that neuromuscular junction, this is fundamentally what it's going to look like. Now, before we go into that, we need to talk about action potential. And action potential is the conduction of the impulse down the motor neuron, okay, via the axon to the neuromuscular junction. Okay, so it's very important to understand. So action potential is the conduction of that nerve impulse down each one of those the components that we were talking about before. And this is the point we're now at, right here. So this is called the synaptic cleft. Okay, so what we'll have here is acetylcholine, and if enough of this acetylcholine is secreted and there is enough of an electrical charge that's high enough, we'll acquire what's known as muscular action potential, or the potential for contraction. So it sends that message into the muscle fibers, and then we're going to have that contraction taking place. So it's very important that we understand that we have the acetylcholine secreted and also the electrical impulse. All right, so we're nearly finished. Last little bit. So we're just looking at that neuromuscular junction again. And there's a term that we say, and it's called the all or nothing principle when we're talking about the action potential. So if the motor unit receives a stimulus that is strong enough, that reaches above a particular threshold, then the muscle fibers will all contract with the same force. So it's got to receive enough of an electrical impulse, and there also to be the secretion taking place for there to be a contraction. But if that potential doesn't get reached, so there isn't enough of a charge, then the muscle fibers will not contract. Okay, so a lot of information there, but let's just summarize that relatively quickly. So you have your motor neurons detecting the message from their central nervous system, and that's known as the action potential. It's sent down via the axons into the neuromuscular junction, and then from there down to the synaptic cleft. There we have the secretion of the acetylcholine, and then we also have the all or nothing principle. So these are the headlines that we need to be paying attention to. Now, the key thing you need to be able to do then is just transfer this into a practical example. So how could you explain you could almost turn around and say about the sensory neurons, couldn't you? Detecting the stimulus, sending the message to the central nervous system, then the motor neurons sending it down the action potential, the action potential going down via the axons to the neuromuscular junction. And then we're also talking about how it then moves down into the synaptic cleft. We have the acetylcholine secreted, and if there's enough of a charge, then we receive that contraction in the all or nothing principle. Okay, that's it from me then. Pause the screencast, go back over it, make sure you understand each one of those components, and we'll talk soon. Thanks very much.